Hello, this is my book haul video for the first half of September. At the start of this month, my wife and I went north to stay in Wolverhampton to attend the funeral of a friend. We were away for 5 days and I didn't really get that much chance to do any book hunting, but I did manage a half-day trip to Shrewsbury, or as the locals say, Shrewsbury, I am told, to visit some bookshops. So I did get a half-day of sightseeing and book hunting. I'm going to start with the books I picked up in Shrewsbury. And there were 3 bookshops that I found, and I did check at least a dozen charity shops as well, but nothing found in the charity shops apart from the Oxfam bookshop. And I'm going to start off with the first shop I visited, which was Welsh Bridge Books. And if you know Shrewsbury, there are 2 bridges. One's the English Bridge and one's the Welsh Bridge. And within perhaps 150 or 100 yards of the Welsh Bridge, there is the Welsh Bridge Books and Collectibles shop. And right at the top, 3 floors, right at the top, there was a room with a fair amount of science fiction. Perhaps the equivalent of 3 bookcases, plus more if you count sort of DC and comics and other things. And so I spent a good while there. I couldn't spend too long because my wife and the widow, the person who died, was with us. So I didn't have a huge amount of time to spend. But I did pick out 5 books there. They were reasonably priced, not cheap, but not excessively dear either. And here are the 5 books. The first one is The Outlaw of Mars by Otis Adelbert Klein. This is Ace G693. Now, I did have a copy of the title. I had the, I believe it was a Ace D paperback, which is not in very good condition. But one of the things I have been trying to collect is the Ace lettered singles. So I was pleased to get this. It's in lovely condition. This one cost me £5. So marginally dear, but I thought worth getting. Another thing I did was I checked all the VGSF paperbacks. There weren't many, but there were perhaps a dozen. And I was looking for upgrades to copies I've already got. So I bought this one, Who Goes Here. Now this is the second printing with fresh covers. I did have a copy of this, but not very good. And the only thing I was a bit disappointed on, in a sense, the red bit appears to have been cut off. So the spine isn't showing the full logo as it normally does. But otherwise, it's in lovely condition. And this one was £3. And this shop priced all its books with a pencil price inside the front cover, done softly so it doesn't mark the page. And the other VGSF that I got is this one, Reach for Tomorrow. Again, lovely condition. And again, an upgrade to the one I've got, although I haven't yet compared them and matched them. So I was happy to upgrade those. Next one, not as great condition, but it's one of the Women's Press books. This is Josephine Saxton, The Travails of Jane Saint. Generally nice condition, but it has a bit of a spine roll and spine creasing. That cost me £3. So, all right, not normally condition I would buy in, but so long since I've seen so many A format paperbacks, I thought I had to get some. And the last one I got from this shop was this. Ben Bova, Sam Gunn, Forever. Lovely condition, virtually as new, and that was £4. Now, I did have another Sam Gunn book when I checked my list, but I didn't have this one. I don't know whether there's a set. I don't know how many there are. I haven't researched that yet, but I was delighted to get this. Lovely condition. Again, Avon first printing. So delighted with that. I was tempted by 2 or 3 others, but I decided I would stop at that. I then went to a bookshop in the market hall, and basically they had one shelf about that long of science fiction. Seemed a little bit dear, and I wasn't really tempted by anything they had. I then did all the charity shops that I could find, and there were lots, and I didn't see a single science fiction book that was of any interest. So I went on to the Oxfam bookshop. Typical Oxfam bookshop. There was one bookcase for science fiction, and I looked through, and to be honest, there was nothing to tempt me. But as I chatted to the staff, and I then wandered outside, and just as I often do, checked the window to see if there was anything, and I saw 2 books that I was interested in. Now, as usual for Oxfam, perhaps slightly dearer than I'd like to pay, but I bought 2 books. I'll show you those. Sorry, I've still got them in the bag I brought them back in. Hang on, let me get the other one out. And they were 2 in this series. The Year's Best Fantasy and Horror, edited by Ellen Datlow and Terry Windling. Now, this is volume 6 and has got a faded spine. But otherwise is in beautiful condition. Maybe a very slight bump to the DJ, but basically lovely condition. This cost me, well, both the books cost me £15. I have only a few others in this series. I've got volumes 1, 2 and 4. So I took this chance to get volume 6. And I also got volume 8. Again, I don't know. The spine doesn't appear to be as faded as the other one, but possibly a little bit of fading. So I was delighted to get those 2. As I say, £15 each. So a little bit expensive. But generally I was pleased to get them. They also had book 2, which I knew I already had. And that was also £15. And volumes 1 and 2 are probably the dearer ones to get in this series. So I could have possibly got that at what some might consider a bargain price. But to be honest, I don't want extra copies, which I then have to try and sell on. So that is what I found on my half-day trip to Shrewsbury. So now I'll come on to the books that I got when I got back. And I'm going to start with a free book first of all. I went to meet a friend for drinks, and I went into the station waiting room, and they have a small half-size bookcase, and they had, apart from a few religious books and tracts, this. And I recognised the title. It's a kid's book. It's an anthology, 12 Tales of Adventure and Space. And the reason I picked that up is 2 years ago, or thereabouts, I found a similar book in a station waiting room. And this is that book. And I'm not even certain whether I'd have picked that up at the time, but for the fact it was signed by many of the contributors. But it didn't have a dust jacket, but I bought it. I was in two minds whether to keep it. And for those who want to, you can pause the video to look at the people. Unfortunately, the signatures don't seem to include two or three best known people in terms of being the authors. So it didn't appear to be signed by Roddy Doyle. Didn't seem to be signed by Eoin Colfer. I'm not certain whether I pronounced that right. Derek Landy is another well-known children's author. And as far as I could see, none of those had signed. But even so, it's signed by several, some of which I can recognise whose signature it is and some I can't. So the reason I picked this one up is to get the dust jacket. And I'm going to be left with a hardback that I don't really want. So I will probably recycle that via a charity shop or whatever. And oddly enough, when I was back, after I found this, I was in another charity shop where I saw the same book with a perfect dust jacket. But that would have cost me £3. And I thought, is it worth spending £3 just to upgrade the dust jacket and be lumbered with yet another copy of this book? So that was that. And that was my one free book. Well, the one free book that I found this half month. Next, I'm going to show you two books that I picked up from that charity shop I mentioned a few times, which does 2 books for £1. And I saw this, Mercy of Gods. Now, this is a second printing, and I do have a first printing. I think I actually bought it new, but I thought this would be fine as a reading copy, and for £1 it wasn't bad as a reading copy. And I had my usual struggle to see if I could find anything else in this shop's bookcase, and the only one I could find that vaguely tempted was this, The Vampire Shrink by Linda Hilburn. I know absolutely nothing about the author, nothing about the book, but I thought I would take a chance, and as it is effectively free, I would take it. Carrying on, next I'm going to show you a paperback which rather disappointed me because I found this in an Oxfam bookshop. Clipper to the Clouds. Now, I don't have this Jules Verne title, and this is a Scotty book, and as far as I know, I haven't got any Scotty books either, so I thought that would make an interesting choice. It's in lovely condition, but it's been chewed at the bottom, so whether that means a baby's got hold of it and chewed it, or a dog, I have no idea, but it's chewed at the bottom. And the other disappointment, it had a gift aid label, and I don't know whether they've used new glue or something else, but when I tried to remove it, it took a little bit of the surface of the cover off. But I'm not that disappointed, but it is a bit irritating when charity shops use labels that spoil the book when you take them off. So that was a recent purchase. Apparently there are at least 48 books in the series. This is J48. I think they did have a list inside. Or maybe it was, oh yes. At the back they've got a list of all the Scotty books. They're not science fiction by and large. If anyone's interested, they can freeze the screen and have a read. So, I say, it was a learning experience for me finding that book. Next, I'm going to show you 3 books that I picked up from another charity shop that tends to be cheap. They do their paperbacks for 50p each and hardbacks for £1, and I very rarely find anything there because my assumption is that anything that is vaguely decent gets snapped up quickly. But just out, I spotted some books that I've seen on and off over the years many times. I've never bothered looking. But I thought as there were 3, and I didn't know much about the series, I'd just have a quick look. And these are the 3 books. Books by Toby Frost. And I just looked in to see whether they were first printings or other things. And they were all similarly inscribed by the author. So I thought 3 books at 50p each, inscribed by the author. And when I got home, it appears these are the first 3 in what looks to be a somewhat longer series. So, not sure whether I should have got. They are B format, so which I don't particularly like. But I do like signed books, so maybe I'll even read them and give them a chance. The day I found those, I found one other book, and that was this. There Are Doors by Gene Wolfe. This cost me £3. Now, I'm not an expert on Gene Wolfe books, but I don't have this title. I didn't know I wasn't aware of this book. I assume it's one of his later ones, but it's in lovely condition. Because it's one of his later ones, it's perhaps it's not a rare book particularly, but even so, it's probably a £15 or £20 book, and it cost me £3. So that was a nice find that day. Next, another one that I got from another Oxfam shop, so not cheap again. An Arthur C. Clarke, The Deep Range. And it has got spine creases, but otherwise is very nice. Those of you who looked at my video about the VGSF books will know that I didn't collect the VGSF classics, but I do have some of them, and I know that this was missing from my set. I'm still missing 4 or 5. I'm not overly fussed whether I collect them, but I thought the chance to pick one up in reasonably nice condition was worthwhile. I think it was £3, so in some ways I feel I overpaid, but it does fill a gap. Next, I'm going to show you 4 hardbacks. The first one was a gift from a friend. He had lots of spare Waterstones points and asked me if I wanted a book. I said the only one that I could see in there that I was interested in was this. This is the 3rd book in the War Arts saga. Lovely condition and an interesting coloration. I quite like the art. I have the other 2. I think I've got one of them signed and one unsigned. I have read Wesley Chu before. I thought he was reasonable. Nothing to rave over, but very, very readable, very reasonable. And I did quite enjoy the 2 books of his that I have already read. And finally, 3 books that I picked. No, sorry. There'll be 2 books that I picked in North London. The next one was one I ordered off of eBay. I took a chance. It was from We Buy Books. Now, I don't normally buy from those big warehousing dealers where they just put a description. They don't show you a picture, except a stock picture. And this was about £14, but it is a moderately uncommon hardback. I hoped it would be a first printing, which it was. And it's this, Storm Dancer by J. Christoph, which is the first book in the Lotus, I think it is, trilogy. I have book 2. I am still looking for book 3. In terms of condition, there was a little bit of bruising to the top and bottom of the dust jacket, but generally excellent condition. Very tiny nick very, very tiny nick at the top of one of the folds. But generally, it was what I was roughly expecting for a book described as like new. It's certainly somewhere between very good and like new. And finally, I'm going to show you 2 books that I picked up in North London. I went to North London to have drinks with a friend, and I did 3 charity bookshops on the way and didn't find anything. And I got to him, I had a cup of tea, and then we went off to the pub. And on the way to the pub, I wanted to go in a full charity bookshop. And we got there and it was closed. But next door there was an ordinary charity shop. And I was quite surprised. There were about a dozen signed hardbacks on the shelves. But they were mostly by authors I didn't know. They did not really appeal to me. Quite a lot of them looked like romantasy. And I suspect they weren't worth very much. But I thought, I can't pass this up. As I hadn't bought anything that day, I decided to buy 2, take a chance. And it's possible that I missed one real bargain, but it was authors I didn't know. So the first one I bought was this, Mordew by Alex Phoebe. Now, I don't know whether it was the last or the one before book haul video in which I showed you the paperback that I picked up for £2. And I thought maybe I'd do better buying the signed hardback. It's the first printing. And that one I think cost me £5. So I thought it was worth getting, and I think, you know, it's not worth a huge amount more, but it is, I think, worth at least £5. And the other one I got was an author I've never heard of. I haven't even researched this, so I don't know whether it's worth anything more. But 7 Deaths of an Empire by G.R. Matthews. This one cost me £4. This was signed and dated. I know nothing about the author, nothing about the book, never heard of it. So if anyone wants to say something in the comments, please do. As I say, I left at least another 8 or 10 in the shop. They all range from £3 to £5, all signed. I think a couple were a Lumicrate, but to be honest, they all look like romantasy. And while I don't object to a good novel, there are some absolute rotters as well amongst the romantasy, and I don't want to be overloaded. I'm running out of room, so while I can't resist buying some, I did resist buying the bulk. Hope you enjoyed that. That is my book haul for the first half of September. Thank you. That's me signing off.